Okay, I think we're live here. Just seeing everybody checking in on the chat. Great suggestions for cold remedies. You guys are actually making me hungry. Chicken soup and honey and lemon. We've got good honey in our country here. I have sick kids, which is why I'm asking. We were having the cold virus go through, and this is going to be a fairly short lesson because I do have a doctor appointment for my daughter here a little later this afternoon. So welcome everybody. I think you should be able to hear and see me. Yeah. So hello. I'm Angela Fehr, and I'm real glad to be here today because, like I said, I headed out to the doctor with my daughter a little later, and I was a little worried I'd have to cancel to try to fit a doctor appointment into our day. So that's not happening. They were able to accommodate my schedule, and so we're here with a live video lesson on watercolor painting. This is the second last lesson for this year. I'm going to take the month of December off, so next week we'll have one more live lesson in November, and then December I'm going to be spending time with family, and actually I have a course idea that I'd like to work on as well, so we'll see how far I get with that. Don't want to make any promises until I know if I have the time to do it or not. So yeah, welcome everybody. I see people checking in from all over the world again, and that always makes me very happy that we can come together on a winter day or a summer day if you're down in the southern hemisphere. So today what we want to talk about is painting with a little bit more control, because I know, especially if you're just getting started, it can often seem like watercolor has its own has a mind of its own. You know, it's going to do its thing, and you're just kind of along for the ride. And which is, you know, a great way to create some very loose paintings. But we also want to feel like we have a say in what's happening on our paper. So we're going to talk about that. And one of the first things I want to suggest, if you're struggling with painting and feeling like you're in control of what's happening on your painting, is that you want to spend a little more time thinking before you start painting. And I used to tell people in my classes, watercolorists, because things dry so quickly, you have to paint quickly. And so we were always talking about being speedy. And so they would feel very rushed as soon as they would get into the mindset that I need to start painting. They would have this feeling of urgency, that they're in a race against time here, and that's a little bit counterproductive. Yes, we do have to be aware that drying times are going to affect what's happening on our paper. But before we ever put the brush to the paper, we need to be thinking. We need to, what I like to say is, we think slow and we paint fast. So take your time, plan what you're going to do, and then quickly go in and do it, and then stop. Don't paint past your plan. And I think that's where a lot of us get tripped up. Is I know for myself, I'll go to the studio, I've got a painting on the go, and I look at it. I kind of have been thinking about it since my last painting session and what it needs next. I look at it and I kind of decide, this is what I need to see happen on this painting. These are the details I need to add. And then I add those details, and then I'm having such a good time and things are going so well that I keep painting. And so I'm painting past my plan. And as soon as I extend myself beyond what I had in mind to do, I'm in a no man's land. I'm in this zone that doesn't have any planning. And so there's a lot more likelihood for me to make a mistake. And of course, I'm experienced. I've had many years of painting, so I'm less likely to make a mistake than you might be with a little less time and experience. But there's still much more risk involved when you're painting beyond what you've been planning to do. So I really want to encourage you, when you sit down to paint or stand up to paint, have a scheme in mind, have a plan, the steps you're going to take, and then stop. And it doesn't mean you have to completely walk away, but stop, pause, let yourself put the brakes on, back up, and take a look at your painting and make your new plan. So and that really goes a long way towards feeling like you're more in control of what's happening on the paper. I think you also need to, you know, if you're doing that, you're pausing to think, then you're also going to be better able to react to what's happening on the paper. So if things didn't quite go as expected, you can revise whatever you had in mind to do and make a new plan to react to what's happening on your paper. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to move right over to my work surface here, and I see I'm missing out on all kinds of interesting chat over there as I'm talking, but I want to just welcome everybody. I see quite a number of you from my online classes, and I love seeing that I'm able to, work with you. We've worked together. You've taken my online courses on my learn.angelafehr site, and now I get to work with you again in these live lessons, and I love that. So welcome to all of you who have taken my online classes. And if you're brand new to my watercolor lessons, welcome to you as well. I teach live here once a week on Tuesdays, and I'm going to be teaching on Tuesdays for the time being. We'll see how that goes for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll take a break and I'll resume in the new year again. And it will be Tuesdays because I'm teaching art with my children's school on Mondays and Thursdays. So welcome to all of you who are here and haven't worked with me before. And we're going to move over to my work surface, and you guys can take a look at actual painting techniques that involve just being a little bit more controlled. So I'm just going to switch the camera over. And if you're hearing coughing in the background, that would be my daughter. She had quite a miserable night last night, and I'm feeling very sympathetic for the poor girl. She's been a real trooper with this horrible cough that she has. Okay, I think, there we go. So here's my painting surface. And yeah, I'm recognizing quite a lot of you guys' names from my online classes. And again, welcome. Okay, so this is a little wash that I did in one of our previous lessons, and we were just talking about painting loosely. And so now when you have a first layer like this is often the time when you really need to start thinking about being in control. Because, this is very loose, very fluid. We were able to paint it and kind of let it do its thing. But now when we start planning how we want this to look, we need to have more control. And really the key, this is one thing you can remind yourself whenever you're painting, is that the more water you're using, the more things are going to move. Water equals movement. And that's one of my cardinal rules for watercolor painting, is to remember that water equals movement. When you're painting with a lot of water, things are going to move a lot more. I'm just going to move things so you can maybe see a little bit more of what I'm doing off of the paper as well as on it. There we go. Okay, so now you can see my 2 water containers, so I can rinse my brush in one and then make sure it's perfectly clean in the other. And I have a little paper towel just to dab that drip off my brush. And I'm just going to make a little petal in my palette here of this lovely magenta mixed with a little bit of blue and a little bit of violet, just left over from a previous painting experience. And I want to have a little more control, and I want to start defining maybe some flowers in my scene. So I am using less water than I did originally. And one thing you can do is just what I call glazing. And anytime you're glazing is you're layering over top of a previously painted area, and you're enhancing that with some detail. So I've done just a little brush stroke that's sitting right there on the paper, and while it's still damp, I can smooth it out and soften that edge. And I'm just using a tiny bit of water and to create a lovely little flower petal right there. And I used just a tiny little bit of water. I wanted a crisp edge on this side, and that was where going in with my brush on dry paper created that. But that edge that was showing on this side I removed by just using a little bit of water and letting things bleed out. And now that this area is damp, it's not shiny, it's just a very little bit damp. And so then I can decide maybe I want to touch in a little bit more color just to keep it interesting. And because it's damp, I know that color will soften and flow where the paper is damp, and yet keep that nice crisp edge. And again, by blotting my brush, I don't have a drippy brush, so I'm keeping control by using less moisture. And then I can, use my brush to encourage things to move a little bit and soften things out. if I were to add a lot of water at this stage, nice big water droplet, it pushes the paint that's there already and starts to create an edge. And so I have, again, less control as a bloom is created. So just using less water really helps you to keep things in control and helps you kind of decide what's going to happen. And then I can do that with another petal, maybe over on this side. I'm just going to use the straight magenta this time. And notice too that I'm holding my brush lower on the ferrule. When I'm painting in larger brush strokes very expressively, I'm holding my brush higher. But when I want to have control, then I kind of choke up on the brush. And that's something I watch for when I'm painting. That once I start choking up, I know I'm getting into the detail areas. And if I don't want to do that, then I need to stop and loosen up and move my hand position. Again, adding a little water to let that color flow, keeping my beautiful edge, and yet creating some softness as well. And that's really pretty, actually. I want to keep the freshness to my painting, which means I'm not going to layer colors that are complementary to my pink flower here. I don't want to put some green over top of it because that's going to give it kind of a murky, cloudy look. So I want to keep it light and fresh. And that's just done by using colors that mix without creating muddy neutrals. And so that's just a little bit of working with a little bit more control, using less water, and then I love this technique of just creating that crisp line. And maybe I want to create a bunch of crisp lines just with the tip of my brush to create some texture in the flower. I could do that as well. Maybe it needs some little texture strokes. And again, working with just mostly paint, not a lot of water, and dry paper. I know that the color I place is not going to move in those areas. If my color goes and touches this damp petal over here, that's when I know it's going to bleed and flow. And maybe I want to put some little pollen-y bits with this yellow. And if it touches this magenta, it might soak in and bleed, so then I might get a little bit of an orange, which wouldn't be all bad. I'm going to do that a little bit. And then if that yellow touches my damp petal, it's going to bleed as well. So let that flow a little bit, and I think that's really quite pretty. I wish I had a little more control over this camera when I'm streaming and I could zoom in for you. We're working on just a little small piece of paper, which I'm going to switch right now over to a bigger sheet, slightly bigger. Here we go. This is just a sheet of Arches watercolor paper. And again, we want to continue to talk about being in control and having a little bit of foreknowledge of what's going to be happening. And a lot of that is really just getting familiar with watercolor techniques. This is something you can do, and if you don't feel like you're in control of what's happening on your paper, then you probably just need to spend a little more time growing your skills. And again, I'm just doing the same thing as I did before, creating my original shape. And that looks to me like a pretty little flower petal. Clean my brush and rinse it. And then create a beautiful soft transition by using a clean damp brush to move that color. And create a soft edge on one side and a crisp area on the other. And this gives you that look of softness and fluidity, but you have a lot more control. And this is why people always ask me, Angela, are you painting wet on wet? And most of the time I don't paint wet on wet, which is traditionally one of those famous watercolor terms that everybody knows. But I like to do this, it's more of a wet on dry technique, I guess, where you start with dry paper, you create that shape, and then you have control of that shape because the paper is dry, and then you can go from there and add some beautiful fluidity just with a little bit of water, let things bleed. And I'm going to touch some of that yellow in. Yellow and violet are complementary, so it might make a little bit of a grayish, muddy bit, but I think if I don't scrub it, if I let it just flow on its own, the yellow will kind of retain its own identity, and it'll stay quite pretty. And so there you have just a little bit more control of what's happening, and yet that beauty of fluidity. And that's that wet on dry technique that I love so much. And then from there, you just keep building on it. And I think the best way to do a wet on dry technique is to work from your focal point, whatever the main areas of your painting are. So I can create a new petal here, and changing up the colors to keep it interesting. And then knowing that if I were to continue with more of the blue and violet paint, my petal would start to get quite dark. So then maybe I just use a little bit of water to spread out the color that's already there and keep it light. And then if I want to adjust the color slightly, it's juicy enough that I can touch in some colors that will maybe reinforce my shape and yet keep that softness and fluidity. And then if I and then always if you're working on a painting like this and you see things happening, you're working quite fluid, but you want to be in control, and you see a color start to take over. And I'm going to just give an example of that. Grab some more of this yellow, and say I put on too much yellow and it really starts pushing up into that violet. Well, the best way to stop that, to put the brakes on, to get back into control, is to remove some moisture. And I love using my brush for this. I just blot it on the paper towel, and then I can very gently, and I'm not rubbing and scrubbing, I'm just tapping, just tap and lift to lift out some moisture. And as soon as you remove that moisture, the yellow can't move anymore. It doesn't, that water equals movement. The yellow can't go anywhere if it's not moist enough for it to flow. And so I get my control back, and then I can decide to let everything dry and then go back in and maybe tidy up, add some details that camouflage that yellow that took over the way I didn't want it to. Does that make sense, folks? Love to hear some of your questions right now. The one thing I haven't mentioned, another way to just stay in control is to, oh look, my hand is very painty, is to use a smaller brush and deal with, I love my Escoda number 10 rigger brush. It's a beautiful brush, and I like that it comes to a nice fine point so I can get beautiful detail lines. When I want to get extreme detail and have extreme control, then I would choose a smaller brush. But most of the time I'm looking for a larger brush so I can paint in larger shapes, because it just, working with a tiny little brush, you tend to get caught up in fussy detail far too soon in your painting stage of growth. Okay, I think we're gonna I'm just going to go to the chat and take a look at your questions, and then I'm going to show you a book recommendation, my book recommendation for the week. So just taking a peek here at the comments. I appreciate everybody giving me some different cold remedies. I was Googling last night because she just was coughing, and for a parent, I think there's few things more stressful than having a sick child. So thank you guys. Looking for your questions, scrolling through here. Janet asked if all my lessons from here on out would be on a Tuesday. They will be for the time being, and I'm actually really liking Tuesdays, so we'll just see if I'm able to continue to commit to that. I teach local classes on Tuesday nights, so I really get to be in teaching mode on Tuesdays. What is my favorite color right now? That's a great question from Lazy Wonder Brush. What am I liking right now? I've been using, got to have a little flashback to what I've been using lately. I've been using a lot of beautiful violet colors lately. Amethyst Genuine has been a lot of fun by Daniel Smith. It's actually very sparkly. It's got Actual ground up amethyst is for, well, no, it probably doesn't have actual ground up amethyst. I'm just guessing here. But they do, Daniel Smith does put some different iridescent stuff in some of their colors, and I think it's some ground up mica or something, but it has a beautiful shimmer, and it's kind of a murky purple, so I like that right now. And Frihilda says she bought the book recommendations I shared 2 weeks ago, and one of them cost 1 penny. I don't make a lot of commission on a 1 penny book. I might have to try recommending some more expensive books, you guys. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sharing books that I love, and I like being able to encourage you to check out different books that have encouraged me. Do I always paint on a flat surface? I tend to start out fairly flat, but most of the time I usually tilt my board up about an inch or so, and then sometimes, just depending on what I'm doing, I might lean it right up on my water container, so it's got quite an incline. So I do, that's why I use a painting board, is so I can move it around and adjust the angle so that things flow the way I want them to. Lena says, I most need to learn patience. I often fail to wait long enough before I try to go back in and touch up things so I make a bigger mess. That is, yeah, I think that's most of us have that issue, Lena. It's just, we get so impatient and we get eager to get to the best parts of painting, and we don't always wait the way we should. Oh, I can just a little brush stroke will fix that, and then it's a disaster. Viviane asks, if you want to paint a background, is it better to paint it first? A lot of the time I try to do a first, like if I'm doing a landscape or something, I try to do a first layer where everything's kind of got a basic color, so the whole page is covered, and I've defined the basic shapes. For a floral, I might I might paint something like this, but then as I'm painting, I start to plan my background as I'm painting. So I might start to flow some color out like so that when I do decide to put my background in, it usually happens kind of as I'm painting. Something like that, maybe. Oh, that's pretty. That's a little bit of green gold. And then I can just get at least a very little bit of color on the paper, and that helps when I decide to go deeper into my background and create a stronger background, because I don't just have this cutout shape of a flower and then this background I have to paint around it. I have kind of a soft give and take flow between my object and my background. Yeah, great questions from everyone. Lazy Wonderbrush asks about my next online course. I have something in my mind. I'm just hoping to have the time to work on it. I'm not going to tell you anything more than that. Actually, I have about 2 or 3 courses in my mind. I wish I could clone myself or have a little bit more time, because I've been so busy. Okay, I'm going to move right on to my book recommendation. And and actually I do want to do one more thing, and that is in my online classes on learn.angelafehr.com. I have student galleries where students can post their work, and then I try to check in every week or 2, sometimes it's a little bit longer, to comment and critique and give guidance on student work. And I had a student post a painting recently on one of my landscape courses, and she said, I've never been able to paint trees or a sky. And I still can't. And so when a student tells me I can't paint this object, that really bugs me. She's probably good she wasn't in my local class, because I would have given her a real hard time about that. Whenever we say I can't do something, we really have to think about why. And most of the time it's a mental block. It's a little bit of fear or something. So what I like to, and what I told her basically was, take the time to study I'm just going to switch my camera over. Take the time to study whatever it is that you're having trouble with, and you can learn it. And then I gave her some suggestions for ways to look at that thing that she was blocked about and paint it, just to develop her skills in learning how to paint it. I don't think I explained that very well. For example, I said one thing. Let's see here. I suggested, like a lot of times I think when we say, oh, I can't paint that object, we don't realize that one object is just the same as every other object that we're painting. They're all made up of dark and light values. They're all made up of shapes. And so really it's that mental block that says, I can't paint trees or I can't paint cats, but doesn't recognize that painting a cat is the same as painting a house. You're looking at the shapes and you're looking at the values to create a believable subject. And so we kind of have to turn that part of our brain off that says this is the thing that I can't paint, and just focus on learning to see it and then learning how to paint what we see. So I encouraged her to do that. And then I also told her, give yourself a break. When you're working hard to strengthen one of your painting's one of your weak areas, something that you're learning, it can be really easy to get discouraged because you don't see results right away. And so it's important when you're trying to learn a new technique or learn a new subject to take a break and do things that are fun and easy, something that feels really good. And sometimes I find when I take time away from something I've been struggling to learn how to paint, it'll actually lead me to the breakthrough I need. And she commented just the other day, just to thank me for that feedback. She said, I spent some time working and practicing nothing but trees, which is the area she was struggling with. She used some of my older YouTube videos, which have some demonstrations on painting trees. And then she had a breakthrough. She's focused on that thing she couldn't paint, and she saw results. And I want to encourage you too. It's really exciting to feel like something you couldn't do, all of a sudden, by focusing on it, by studying it, by trying different things and experimenting, to see that breakthrough happen, it gives you this feeling of power, because then you say, I can do it, and I can teach myself anything. And really, I mean, I love teaching you guys, but at the end of the day, it's your determination, your focus that helps you to grow as an artist. And so I'm really humbled and honored to be able to be a part of that by teaching watercolor. So that was just my little exciting moment today, to read her comment and hear that she saw this growth and was excited by it. It was really fun to be able to be a part of that and to encourage her that she didn't have to have this block that I can't paint this subject. And I love it when I'm able to do that for you guys. Yeah. Okay, quickly sharing my book recommendation, and it is this book today, Realistic Abstracts, and I'm going to say his name wrong because I'm not Dutch, Kees van Aalst. And this book is just packed with really cool paintings. Realistic Abstracts is really all about taking what you see, and then painting it in your own style, in your own way, interpreting it and creating something that is all based on your own vision. And so I love this book because it's very inspiring. I think even if you're not an abstract painter, to see that an artist can take, a scene like this, and this is a city scene, and or a village, we see buildings and we see trees in these basically random assortment of shapes. And, an abstract painting can be very detailed. I like this one with the cats because it's both abstract and realistic. And although it's, not my style, not something I would do, but I love being inspired by other artists and seeing how they've broken through traditional painting styles to create something exciting and interesting, and something we enjoy looking at. And there's a lot of different artists represented here. We've got just so many different styles. And so I really like this book for just inspiring me to be true to what I think is my own vision for my paintings. Because, in looking at these beautiful realistic abstracts, we see some styles that really break a lot of barriers and show that artists can paint anything. Whatever is in here to paint, we're working to let that out, and that's why we're here. And so that is Realistic Abstracts by Kees van Aalst, and there are links to the book on Amazon on the description for the video, for this video. Down below the video, or some of you might find it in the right-hand sidebar, you should be able to find a description of this video with lots of helpful links for you. Not only do I share links to the supplies that I've used, but I also have a link to this book, my recommendation for this week, and to my 2017 watercolor calendar as well. If you're ordering it for Christmas, you're running out of time, so make sure you check that out. And I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Again, it's a lot of fun for me to do this. I was really glad I didn't have to miss it today and cancel on you guys. And I also want to encourage you to keep an eye on this channel, because I'm just about finished and ready to launch my video on showing my process for mounting my watercolor paintings on panel and then waxing them for a different type of finish than you traditionally see with watercolor. So watch for that. That should be available in the next day or two on YouTube. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you, Lazy Wonder Brush, for purchasing the Escoda brush. I think the reason that they're so often sold out is because you guys are so supportive of me. And, you know, it's not a magic brush. It's not going to, you know, make a 100% difference in your painting, but it is a beautiful brush. And if you're working with great supplies, and you're still having your paintings not turn out, that's really good news, because that means that the problem is its user issue, and user issues can be solved with practice. So if you're having trouble with your paintings and you know your supplies aren't the problem, that just means you get to practice more and you'll get better, I promise. So have a great day, you guys, and yeah, just thank you for joining me today. I'm Angela Fehr. And you can check out my website, angelafehr.com. Subscribe to this channel so you can be notified when I do live lessons here on YouTube. And also check out my online courses at learn.angelafehr.com. The courses are much more structured than these live classes, and they also come with the student gallery, where you can post your work and receive instructor critiques and guidelines to help you grow personally as an artist. So have a great week, you guys. Happy Thanksgiving to those of you in the States, and bye for now.